step is to prepare your workplace. It must be clean, dry, and spacious. It should be spacious so that you will be able to move freely on your working place. And as much as possible, you try to wear PPE or personal protective equipment. This will prevent you from getting any injuries when you are setting up your LAN. And last, apply the OHS policies and procedures or the occupational health safety policies and procedures so that you will avoid any commotion or problem when setting up your LAN. The second step is to gather all your necessary materials. In my case, I am going to only need 3 materials, which is the router, the personal computer, and an Ethernet cable. A router, just like this, a router, it is the station that controls the data traffic in the network. As you can see, it has 5 ports, 4 for the Ethernet cable, 1 for the power for the antenna, and 1 for the main source of the router, main source of energy of the router. Without this will not be turned on. And this is the reset button. Next is the personal computer. The personal computer is an electronic device where you can manually assign the IP address, the DNS server, and the default gateway, and where you can manage the entire network, where you can assign the server, and where you can control each of the computer. Next is the Ethernet cable. This is an example of an Ethernet cable. This allows us to connect each of the computer to each other and allows us to connect the computer to the router for it to have a source of internet. The third step is to determine the number of computers you want to add in the network. If you're going to only add up to 4 computers in the network, you just simply need to have a router because a router only has 4 Ethernet ports. So that means you can only add 4 computers in the network if you're just going to use a router. But if you're going to add 5 or more computers in the network, you're going to need a network switch. A network switch has much more Ethernet ports dedicated to many computers in the network. When you need 5 or more Ethernet ports because you have 5 or more computers that you need to include in the network, you're going to use a network switch. So it is important for us to determine the number of computers beforehand when setting up a LAN because we're going to identify if we only need a router or we're going to provide a network switch. The fourth and fifth step in setting up a LAN is to plug one end of the Ethernet cable to the computer and plug the other end to the router. By doing this, you will be able to establish a connection between the router and the computer. You're going to plug the other end of the Ethernet cable to the first Ethernet port here in the router. So that now it is connected. Now you must remember that when connecting your personal computer to the router, you're going to need an Ethernet cable, not just a telephone cable because it's not going to work. The sixth step in setting up your local area network is to set up your router and reset your router. At the back portion of your router, you're going to see this small button. This small button is the reset button. When you want to reset the router, you're going to need a pin or a needle. Then you're going to click this. Click this for 10 seconds. Then the lights in the front will be turned off. You're going to wait until it's turned on. But I'm not going to reset this router because when you reset the router, the password will be back to the original. So I'm not going to do that because I already have my password. So basically, I am done setting up my local area network because I only have one computer and I only have a router. But if you do have more computers and you have a modem, and when you have more computers, of course, you're going to need a network switch. So when you have that case, you're going to follow these following steps. The seventh step for you is to connect one end of the Ethernet cable to your modem and connect the other end to your router so that the connection, the internet connection between the modem and the router will be shared to one another. The eighth step for you if you are using a switch is you have to connect the switch to the router. Once again, you will do this by plugging one end of the Ethernet cable to the router and plug the other end of the Ethernet cable to the switch. The ninth step for you is to connect all of your computers to any open LAN ports. You can either connect your computer to the router or you can connect it to the switch. But the procedure is just the same. You're going to plug one end of the Ethernet cable to one of your computers and you're going to plug the other end on the router or on the switch. And you have to repeat this process to every computer in your network. The 10th step is to set up one of your personal computer as the DHCP server. This is only applicable if you have 2 or more computers in your network. In my case, I only have one computer, so I do not need to involve this step when setting up a LAN. But what is the importance of setting up one of your computer as the DHCP server? When you do this, all the computers in your network will be easily obtain an IP address. But how do you do it? You set up one of your computer as the DHCP server by installing a third-party utility. After that, all of the computers in your network will obtain an IP address automatically once the server is running, as long as they are told to do so. The 11th step in setting up the local area network is for you to verify the network connection for each of the personal computer. You're going to do this by checking if each of the personal computer is able to access to the internet, if they are connected to the internet. The last step, or the 12th step in setting up the local area network is to set up your file and printer sharing. By doing this, you allow each of the computer in your network to share files, to share drivers, and to share the printers. Also, you allow one of the computers or one of the user to access another file of another computer. And here's how are you going to do it.
First is you have to go to the control panel. After that, you're going to select network and internet category. Then you have to click network and internet sharing. Lastly, click the change advanced sharing settings.
So that's it. That concludes all the steps in setting up your local area network. You can now set up a local area network even if you only have one computer or you have 2 or more computers. Now remember to follow each steps properly so that you will avoid having malfunctions or you will avoid error when setting up your network. Thank you for watching.